The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Conservatives have mastered propaganda. They are increasingly perfecting their propaganda machine and tactics and techniques. They're presenting this propaganda in a multifaceted fashion, where when you nail down one, you still have like 8 other versions of their propagandistic games that you have to expose the masses to. It's like a constant educational process to inform the public of the game that's being played on them. Conservatives are pouring millions of dollars into this propaganda. They are cornering the market on new media, particularly social media, videos, viral videos on Facebook. They've mastered the art of presenting themselves as something innocuous, as something as bland as just, oh, I'm just a Christian. Here's a really funny Christian video. And then you find your friends, your progressive friends, your family and, black folks who otherwise know that this game is being played by Republicans. You find them sharing this stuff and following these people. And then you have to later on inform them that the people that they've been listening to are right-wing propagandists disguised as, Facebook preachers or Facebook comedians. And that's just one cog in the right-wing conservative propaganda machine that has been efficiently tuned for maximum impact. That's where we are. Conservatives have mastered the art of getting black people to voluntarily suppress their own vote. They found the black nationalist message of there's no reason to vote, or both parties are the same. They found that amazingly effective in terms of depressing the black vote. So now that they don't have to spread a conservative message. No, all they do is lift up people who will say walk away or withhold the vote, which is a new movement apparently starting here in Georgia. Withhold the vote, keep your vote away from the Democratic Party because they don't do anything for black people. And they've co-opted conservatives, white conservatives have co-opted the language of black nationalists. That's where they got the language of the Democratic plantation. And they found that was such an effective tool of getting black people to withhold their vote that now every Tom, Dick, and Trump is using that type of phrase in order to do their little part, right? They're one little contribution to getting more conservative victories, because at the end of the day, it's all about the electoral win for them. It's all about winning on the state level, and it's all about political wins, because they understand political power is economic power. Economic power is social power. They understand that it's cultural power. And so anything they can possibly do, including a single post, everyone is doing their part. Conservatives are moving on one frequency, and that frequency is, by any means necessary, promote the conservative movement. I haven't even gotten to the revisionist histories, right? But before I get to that, I want to juxtapose how effective and how unified the right is to how utterly, ridiculously divided the left is. And by left, I'm saying everyone who's not a conservative. The broad range from anti-Trump Russiagators all the way to the furthest left, people who think Marxist-Leninists are bourgeois. That wide spectrum is so divided into the best word for it, even though it has a religious connotation, would be sectarianism. Right? The sectarian wars of the left go way beyond the overly simplistic Bernie versus Hillary war designation that I use all the time. Because the divide, we've long since broken into even further divides and further sectarianism than that. We've gotten to the point where now a democratic socialist by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is being attacked from the left, which is not surprising if you understand the lay of the land. But it just shows you exactly how ridiculously divided the left is. And while someone will say that, oh, this is the same thing that's happening on the right, well, no, that's not what's happening on the right. Right now, we're coming up to the second annual Unite the Right rally, which is a movement to do just that. That's where you see, I mean, notwithstanding the fact, the significance of what happened in Charlottesville, the purpose of that march was to bring together fascists, to bring together neo-Nazis with white supremacists. They're all fascists, right? With white supremacists and white nationalists who have fundamentally different views of how they should proceed in America. But they're coming together, they're uniting the right for the purposes of fighting back against progressivism, liberalism, and anything that's not conservatism. So while everyone, while we say, oh, these fights internally on the left are necessary, perhaps they are, maybe they are. I don't disagree with that completely. But the fight has become the end itself for so many people on the left. The fight against each other has become the entire range of your political participation and of your political perspective where you engage. You come into this fight to fight people on your own side of the equation, while that would not matter if we were in power. If more specifically, the fights that we have and that we need to fight would be more relevant if we weren't completely out of power. Even more, I can make it even more specific. What we are fighting each other about on the left would mean something if there weren't fascists in power. Because right now we have an administration that has demonstrated its willingness to do everything it possibly can to support its base, not the people who voted for him, but his core base of white nationalists and white supremacists, people who simply get joy out of the fact that we are attacking immigrants and we're attacking people of color and we're attacking black people and that we're vilifying black people and that we're rolling back women's rights and we're getting to roll back a woman's right to choose. That Donald Trump has demonstrated that it is more important that he serves them than it is to be constitutional. And so the divisions on the left, while they seem meaningful and they appear to give people their life's purpose and it drives them, they actually pale in comparison. The thing that gives you meaning in your sectarian fights amongst the left pale in comparison to what's being done to us right before our eyes. Not just in terms of the policy, but the seeds of propaganda that are being sown by this masterful, this machine, this well-funded, well-oiled, efficient propaganda machine, the likes that we haven't seen in our lifetime. We're living in the epoch, the golden era of conservative propaganda, where they can revise history right before our eyes. And there's no institution, there's no group of people, there's no group of intellectuals, there's no authorities, the authoritative voices that can simply say, hey, Nazis were right wing. That's a historical fact. But no, we're in an era where it is publicly acceptable and quite regularly promoted that Nazis were leftists. That's where right-wing propaganda has gotten. That's where we are, where that is being spread, and now people are being convinced of it because of the frequency with which it's being said and by the level of voices that are saying it. People who have been pardoned by the President of the United States, Dinesh D'Souza, spreading he has an entire book, The Leftist Origins of Nazism, or whatever the title is. It's being spread so far and so wide with so much intensity that people are believing it, and it's becoming a part of the American discourse and the lexicon that Nazis were leftists, when historically we know factually that they were not. Simultaneously, on the left, we have huge fights over some esoteric differences between being a democratic socialist and a socialist, or being a socialist and a communist, or being a communist and being a Marxist-Leninist. Those are the fights that give people their meaning when they come online and participate in these fights online. So we have this 1-2 punch of right-wing propaganda being at the apex of anything that we've ever seen from the right. In terms of quantity, in terms of quality, in terms of insidiousness and difficulty to smoke out, because it's a relentless, it requires a relentless approach of constantly over and over again debunking. But even as you debunk, your debunk doesn't get as many views, which matter, as the original lie. So we have this 1-2 punch. It's two things happening at once: the apex of right-wing propaganda and the apex of left-wing sectarian war conflict. That's where we are. And as allergic to conspiracy theories as I am, I have to equate in this equation the possibility that, I think it's a pretty good chance that some of the division on the left that's being disguised as refining leftism to becoming the purest form of progressivism and purity, power, politics, and all that crap is being fueled by right-wing propaganda, or at least right-wing dollars. Because, look at the intersection of this new version of Dim Exit, which is #walkaway. Look at the intersection of who participates in that, right? Walk away and withhold the vote. These ideas that are being presented as a form of wokeness. To the black community, it's presented, oh, I'm woke. I don't participate I don't vote. Right? That's the woke thing to say in the black community. And then, in the progressive community, it means that, it's woke too, but it's like, I'm not a neoliberal shill, or I'm not a pawn of the Democratic Party. I'm not an establishment. I'm walking away. Simultaneously, it's being used by Republicans and conservatives as a means of depressing the vote. Right? The same people who are saying, like, you could literally go into the timelines and see the people who are saying, Democrat, Republican, the meme where they have a box you could check for Democrat, you can have a box you could check for Republican, and you can have a box where you can say, I'm awake. And they check, I'm awake, I'm woke. Go down just 2 tweets later and you see that they're promoting Donald Trump. Because they understand the value, while they could pretend and they could spread the message of being too woke to vote. that automatically benefits them. It benefits the conservative movement. So you have this intersection of people who are pro-Trump. This is obvious, but this is obvious, but the level to which it's being employed and the level to which it is gripping the left and just utterly dividing the left into something scarcely able to mount an opposition on any front, let alone every front. This is what we are up against. And all of it is working towards election victories. On the state, local, federal level, it's all working towards culture war victories, right? Where we have now this absurd position in America that we cannot speak out against the bigotry of bigots, because speaking out against the bigotry of bigots makes us bigoted. Fighting against the intolerance of intolerant people makes us intolerant. And we relentlessly have people on the left. It is ridiculous. We have people on the left who fuel this, and they fuel it because they feel as though it is some type of intellectual victory. Yeah, the people, I talk about this all the time, but the people on the left who are like, you're going to become intolerant yourself, the intolerant left. My friend, you are on the left and you are coddling these types of racists and fascists because you believe it's some higher form of humanity to be tolerant of someone who wants to kill your ally. I mean, the absurdity, the heights to which this type of navel-gazing, that's the phrase that Rush Limbaugh used to use all the time. Like that they've weaponized liberal and progressive navel-gazing against us. They're using it against us. They're using the fact that we actually sit here and think about these things, and we think about them intellectually, and we want to make sure that we get it right. We want to make sure that we're not hypocrites, and we want to make sure that we're saying the right things. We want to make sure that we're not offending people as we say it. They've weaponized all those things against us to the point where now leftists and progressives and liberals are doing the bidding of conservatives by paralyzing the movement against conservatives, while they are getting ready to get a Supreme Court pick who can overturn Roe versus Wade. I mean, they're playing for keeps, and we're playing for, I don't know, turf battles, And by turf, I mean, like, this is my block. That kind of turf, like stuff that isn't even real. When I say turf battles, I'm referring to like gang wars where you're fighting and killing each other over a block that you don't even own. Meanwhile, capitalists are making billions of dollars. That's almost like exactly what we're going through. We're getting into Twitter wars and social media wars over the definition of socialism, which means nothing because none of us are in power, remotely in power, with the opportunity to implement even the lightest version of socialism or the most robust version of communism. And now conservatives have weaponized that, so much so that a core component of right-wing propaganda is implemented by people on the left and done to ourselves in the name of purity politics, in the name of we can't possibly be hypocritical, we can't possibly be intolerant. Meanwhile, they're shoving Nazis are marching in Nazis are getting ready to march in front of the White House. This is no hyperbole. The second annual Unite the Right rally that was in Charlottesville last year that killed Heather Heyer, which included Nazis, it's showing up in front of the White House this year. I can't overemphasize the significance of how influential, how impactful, how widespread, and how well funded, and how efficient right-wing propaganda is in 2018. It's being carried out by people who genuinely believe it. It's being carried out by people who are being paid to believe it. It's being carried out by people who are disgruntled with the left. It's being carried out by people who understand that they can get clicks off of being disgruntled with the left. It's being carried out by people who swear that they are the left, but cause more division in the left than anybody else, than any Republican ever could. I mean, we're literally arguing right now over if Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is left enough. And maybe they aren't even aware of it, but maybe the people engaging in this aren't even aware of the role that they're playing in forwarding right-wing propaganda. I mean, listen, I'm going to finish that thought. Maybe they're not even aware of the role that they're playing in forwarding right-wing propaganda. But then that only makes them a useful idiot. Now, what I was getting ready to, just kind of spill out was that look at the totality of your work. If you as an individual social media warrior, as an individual social media activist, or a person who creates content, or you are a journalist, whatever, or you're just Joe Schmo on the street, if the totality of what you contribute and pour into this system, I don't care what your reason or your motivation is. I don't care what the reason or motivation is. If what you contribute to this national discourse is a net positive for conservatives in a time when conservatives have weaponized every form of Machiavellian manipulations in order to forward policies that absolutely destroy the lives of marginalized people, and hell, it's going to catch up with white people soon too. If what you contribute helps that, then what okay, so first of all, you could do that because, you know, free speech, right? That's your prerogative. Fine, do that, but never, I mean, don't purport to be a part of the progressive movement. And more importantly, those of us who are observing this, those of us who are consuming this content, those of us who are listening to these voices and retweeting these tweets, you need to ask yourself that they are going to forward whatever is going to get them the most clicks. You need to ask yourself if what I am sharing, if what I'm listening to is a net positive for the people who have complete control over our government. It's a net positive. If me sharing a video that attacks Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and spends more time on attacking her than it does anything to diminish the power of the people who are in charge right now. They have complete control over the government. All of the levers of power are in their hands. Their ability to change this country for the better or for the worse is completely in their hands. None of us, nobody on the left has any power significant enough to do anything about what these conservatives are doing right now. So if you are engaging in sharing and listening to and consuming content that empowers those people more, I don't care if it's done in the name of black nationalism. I don't care if it's done in the name of being woke. I don't care if it's done in the name of being a socialist or being a better communist. I don't care what name it's being done in. I don't care what they're trying to sell it as. It is helping the oppressors. It is helping the people who are in power. And if there's nothing else that all of us are supposed to be doing, it is to speak truth to power at a minimum. But if you want the bonus, if you want extra credit, then you should be challenging power and fighting power, not just speaking truth to power, but challenging it and fighting it. And if the sum total of your work is it emboldens those in power. It strengthens them who are in power. It gives them the vocabulary necessary to maintain power and to suppress opposition to their power. If that is the sum total of the value of your work, then you are doing the bidding of white supremacy, because white supremacy is in power in this country like we haven't seen in most of our lifetimes. The rest of today's episode is available on patreon.com. Go to patreon.com/the BPD show and go ahead and finally do what you've been planning on doing for some time, which is to become a patron.